Hey everyone, and welcome to the next edition of Altered Insights. We are joined today once again by the core crew of Kawa and Trickster, but a lot has happened in this past week. Well, first of all, guys, we released our first episode of the Altered Insights podcast, and on the behalf of all of us, we'd like to say thank you so much for the incredibly warm reception that it received. I don't know about you guys, but it was so heartwarming to see the comments and all the support.
Yeah, 100%. I was actually blown away by it as well. For the very first episode of a relatively new game post launch was huge. Everyone responded to it really well. I think it just shows what a great start Altered has had. The community that's starting to form around it. And yeah, I can't wait to just start interacting with more of you guys throughout the episodes of the pod that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, Trickster, what did you think about the reception?
It was amazing. It was fun to see a lot of you like shooting comments and reaching out. Super glad to just keep this series going and be sharing more with all of you. I feel like the Kickstarter was just like the perfect segue into the release of this game because that community is already established and it's just growing exponentially. It's such a new game, but it has so much momentum.
Yeah, it definitely does. And this past week has been busy for all of us. Myself, I was at TwitchCon doing a bunch of work there and just running around like crazy. It's been such a insanely busy week, and I've been trying to get some board game arena games when I can. But I spent a lot of time just kind of like sitting around, laying in bed, thinking about like, okay, I need to build a deck. And I've been building decks like, well, just like my mind is completely fixated on deck building. Any given time I have a chance with like my phone by myself. And I love the idea that like this game is brand new and I feel like it's just a massive box. It's like Pandora's box waiting to be open with deck building and design and stuff like that. So I've been really deep in designing all different decks for all different heroes. But before we dive right into that, I need to ask, okay, it's been a really busy week for you guys as well. Kawa, do you want to fill us in on what your weekend was like, sir? Because if I have any indication, it's been a wild one.
So as you guys can tell, I'm not in my usual setup. I'm in a hotel room at the moment. I'm in London. I was here for a Disney Lorcana event, which featured like 30 other European creators. They were flown over from, Germany, France, Italy. And I sat down to play my games yesterday. I'm like, you know what? This is going to be nice, casual, creator event, some nice games. It was the most sweaty tournament I've been to in a while. It was absolutely insane, but it was a great time. I did manage to win the whole thing, which was absolutely crazy. So my weekend's been pretty good. I actually also played in a Star Wars event today as well, where I came sixth. It was only 34 people in that, but I've been kind of card gamed out. But that being said, in terms of Altered, I've actually been like, again, this is the beauty of this game, right? I'm talking about all of these other physical card games I'm playing at the moment, but through my time, on public transport or in the airport and stuff, I've been playing some Altered on BGA. And previously last week when I was talking to you guys on the first pod, I was mentioning I was playing a lot of Muna and I was playing, kind of like the boost plant deck. And I remember that Justin and Trickster mentioned Waru, and I know you're mentioning it as well, Alex, the bureaucrats. And I was like, I've heard a lot about this deck, but I actually didn't get a chance to play it. And I've been playing it a little bit this week. And it's been super fun. I can really see the power level of it, but it's also like as powerful as it is, I also find it pretty tricky to play because I'm trying to figure out, okay, when do I, make my guys, have the asleep effect, or when do I really need to actually commit to the board? Because there's definitely situations where when you use that asleep, you kind of give up agency and maybe let them take, let them move forward in a day when you're not really able to, but then you kind of reclaim the next day. And it also has some really interesting cards in the deck. At least my build, I think it's probably mostly the same, but I like I think is it talk the rare version in particular, which basically means that the other expedition that this card isn't in and the expedition facing it just can't move forward at all. And the rare version is really good because it costs 5 rather than 6. So that's been a really cool card. And I think the thing that's been that's really made that Waru deck work quite well for me actually has been also this is an out of faction card. It's the Bountiful Meadow. So again, like I said, I was previously playing some Muna, and Bountiful Meadow is pretty good in that when you can just start cheating out plants. But with this card, you just cheat out some bureaucrats and start to play them a little bit more cheaply, and things get pretty crazy pretty quickly. But yeah, there's definitely some like sequencing and play patterns that you want to kind of understand while playing Waru. It's not like, oh, this is just an insane deck and you can pick it up like that. Maybe some people can better than others, but I do think that there are important play patterns and important things to realize in terms of when you know, like I said, when you want to actually make your characters asleep, or if you want to just kind of like hard cast them and just get rid of the asleep for a certain turn. What are your thoughts on this deck, Trickster, in general? Because I'm sure you're a big fan of it. I think I actually used your build as the shell for my deck. So
I am a big fan of Waru. I do think you're right. It is a trickier deck. I feel like there are some more beginner-friendly decks and some more like skill-requiring and demanding decks. I think Afanas is definitely one of those. I think Waru is definitely one of those. Probably even Fen as well. I feel like I can totally understand the struggle where you're like, when do I sleep my guys and when do I play them awake? Because you want to sleep your card as the last card you play so you can see like which side you're winning and losing. But you also want to play your awake character as the last card you play so that you can win one of the expeditions and use it based off of what your opponent does and be reactive. So it's like everything you want to play, you wish was your last card of the day, and you really have to figure out which one you can afford to play earlier, even if that means, oh, I'm not going to draw a card with my attorney because I slept it on the wrong side. But was the draw more important, or actually being able to win an expedition this day and things like that? It is a very demanding deck, and it's scary maybe for new players to play as well, because pretty much every game I play with Waru, I'm behind for like the whole game until I win.
yeah,
So
that's just,
you
it's exactly how I felt. I was playing it and I'm like, okay, I can see the parallel, but I'm like, I'm giving up so much agency by doing
yeah.
this. I'm like, sure, the next turn I might be able to come back, and then on top of that, it's trying to understand not only doing the asleep to activate Waru's effect, but also like a lot of cards in this deck, like Monolith, Legate, and what else is it here? The Ordis Attorney, right? It's like, okay,
Mm.
if my character's asleep, I kind of guarantee to get this bonus effect from the card, so I can draw a card or sabotage. And it's like, obviously that's good, but you have to weigh that up in, okay, is it good enough for me losing, this expedition this day? You know what I mean? So it's definitely a tough one. Have you had much experience on the deck, Alex? Or I know you said you're a big Ordis fan in general, right?
Yeah, so my first couple weeks with the game in BGA, I've been playing a lot of Ortis. I'm the kind of mindset where I like really fixating on one faction and ironing it out like a lot. And then eventually I'll end up playing everything, kind of like what Trickster was talking about last week, right? But right now I have been playing a ton of Ortis, and I started with the Bureaucrats deck, and I was doing a lot of work with it, and ultimately, I might sound crazy, but I've just been really liking Sigismar and Wingspan. And I think because, like, the game's still new, and I think that the victory conditions are so straightforward, and that, like, what you were saying was absolutely right. With Waru and Mac, it feels like the decision-making trees are so wide. And so I think you really need to consider, like, okay, hold on. You need to have like more of a better understanding of like what your opponents are playing, because with Waru and Mac, you can take a risk as to like, okay, I think I know what they're going to play next. I know the archetype they're playing. I know the deck they're playing approximately. So if I put this thing asleep, that decision making that goes into making those choices can only be informed with a lot of experience. And so without having that much experience, because the game is brand new, I feel like Waru and Mac is difficult to pilot. What's not difficult to pilot is Sigismar and Wingspan, because you just go wide as heck, you just throw down charge, and you get the dub, right? I feel like the game plan is so much more straightforward. And I think, Trickster, you touched on it before. These types of decks, right, they have this like inherent kind of like knowledge requirement, domain knowledge that's required in order to pilot them with a high degree of effectiveness. And so for me, while I was experimenting with the Bureaucrats, and I do think that they're ultimately going to be like a meta shaker for Ortis come tournament time and stuff like that into the next couple months, for me, maybe it's just comfort food, but I've been playing a lot of just straight up zoo.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like just go wide and win, right? Like play a bunch of dudes, put a lot of power on the board. Yeah, actually, I do want to ask you, Trickster, as well, because I know last week we were discussing with Justin that Izmir is like, we're kind of assuming one of the harder factions to play. Just like from a deck building perspective, and from, I think it's going to be a very control oriented deck. You're very much reacting to what your opponent does. Have you been testing that at all this week, or I mean, in general, have you been playing anything spicy this week, or has it kind of been like, you know, your usual decks?
So right now I am getting ready for the Altered Grand Tournament being hosted by Gamers Guild. It's happening on, I believe, the 12th of October, so in about 2 weeks from now. And so I kind of have a goal that's guiding my testing at this point. And I am still casting a pretty wide net, about 5 heroes. The things I'm testing the most right now are, let's see if I can go in faction color order. So I believe we got Traced for Axiom. Um, I'm not looking at any of the Bravos heroes right now. Not that they aren't maybe playable, but I don't have any Bravos uniques, so I just kind of have moved on from that. Then next up, Lyra. I'm testing Fen still some. And then for Muna, Tasia, definitely still on the table. Takes us to Ordis. I am looking at Sigismar and Waru there. And then for now the last one, Izmir, I'm looking at Afanas actually. So I have almost one hero from each faction that I'm still interested in. Um, I've started to narrow it down a little bit, maybe more from there, but it's kind of that spot where like if I get frustrated, I might go back to one of these other ones, even if I've crossed them off for now. But yeah, those are kind of all on the table for me. It is interesting kind of trying to read the meta and that is inexistent but suddenly forming, you know. It's like I've looked at a lot of tournament results and tried to see what's popular, and surprisingly or not to some people, it looks like about in almost every locals or event I've seen a recap for, there's about twice as many Sigismar as the next highest hero. And so it is very popular right now. And usually the distribution I see is something like 10 Sigismar and then 5 of all of the other heroes that I mentioned, and then like 2 of all
Wow.
of the other ones. So it's like Tasia, Waru, and like some of these other ones are still Traced. Tasia, Waru, Traced definitely are still popular. And then maybe like slightly behind them, we got like Basira, Kojo, and some of the other ones I've mentioned. But right now, yeah, we've really got Sigismar leading the charge amongst players on the ladder and things alike. I think on online, a lot of people are playing Fen 2 more so maybe than in events right now. But yeah, so now seeing what people are playing too, it is something to think about. Where when I'm picking my decks, I'm like, well, I probably have to be, and everyone should probably have to be prepared for Sigismar. Even if you don't think it's the strongest, it's definitely going to be what you're going to be up against. So yeah, I've been testing, yeah, all of these heroes that I've mentioned. I do like Afanas a lot. We've got him up on the board right here. I think he's the only Izmir hero that can hold his own against Sigismar. And I think that is because you can anchor your own powerful characters while doing your disruption game plan. And if you're playing something like Akisha, when you just play your small bodies, you'll never be able to remove enough of Sigismar's characters and outstat them on the board. But with Afanas, you can actually like go toe to toe with people for the expeditions. And so, yeah, with like your mage dancers, your sneezer shrooms, and then all of your helping hands, re-anchoring effects and things, if you like don't get disrupted by your opponent, you can probably make as much stats on the board as anyone else can. But there are some weaknesses with this deck where if your opponent has sabotage, they can mess up like your cycle, or if they have a removal spell like teamwork training, they can absolutely like decimate you because you go really all in on one character in an expedition instead of playing multiple characters. So removals and things like that can really hurt you a lot. I think with my team, we have one player, Skycrier, who every day or every couple days is posting like an opening hand puzzle for Afanas. And I think that some of our biggest discussions are based around these because unlike a lot of the heroes where it's like, well, I just play this day one and this day two, for Afanas, you're already playing multiple cards day one, and you need to play multiple cards day two. But at that point, if you've already played 2 cards day one, now you have to like be already thinking about what you're going to draw for day 2. Like you can't you'll already play with cards that you don't even have in your hand starting on like the second day. And so it's really hard to plan ahead, and sometimes you have to figure out like if you're keeping combinations of cards, it's hard to keep a response to multiple things your opponent can do, because you might need 2 cards to respond to this and 2 different cards to respond to that, and so it just makes it a lot harder to I think pick your hands optimally. You can get lucky and just like make the right choice based off of what they get, but sometimes you'll have to like weigh the factors and be like, which one can I maybe afford to like get punished by, which one's maybe like a less weak of a punish. I don't know if that all makes sense, but yeah, I really feel like the hero can be quite complicated, especially early on. Later on, you'll draw lots of cards and kind of build your hand and get established, but the early game is very important and very difficult to navigate for this hero.
I think there's like multiple like stages of learning a game like Altered TCG, and I think you touched on a couple things there. First of all, establishing like the domain knowledge of like the cards and the synergies and the heroes themselves. That's kind of stage 1, right? What you're talking about is stage 3. I think like you're so far ahead of like the intricate stuff, and like I love the fact that you bring up the opening hand puzzle, because I actually think that what you mana and what you don't is probably the highest skill element of this game that you consistently interact with. If you put down a mana card that you're like, uh-oh, I'm gonna regret doing that, you know what I mean? Then like I think that also comes into play of like, okay, what is my opponent playing? What is their deck? What is their game plan? Right? If you're against a Fen, you might have to consider, keeping specific cards while kind of manning other cards. And I think that's different, like altogether, depending on which faction you're against, which heroes you're against, right? And so like I do think that decision as to what you mana is incredibly important. And if anything, okay, I think that it's one of those things that you have to really fixate on if you're trying to become competitive. Because if you don't have that down, especially when you're in top deck mode, what you mana and what you don't, and if you even choose to mana, right? I find myself, like, I tend to play very aggro-centric, and sometimes I'm at 7, and I'm like, I think I can win this game now. You know what I mean? I'm going to use both these cards. I got a Bravos Tracer in my hand. I'm ready to go. I'm not manning nothing. We're going for it. You know what I mean? And so I do think that decision can be one of the highest skill cap ones you can make. And I know, Kawa, for you, like you're very experienced with that, because not only does Star Wars do it, but also Lorcana does it as well. So you're quite familiar with that type of process.
Yeah, man, and it's something I've learned through playing Lorcana for the past year now. Is it's the difference in Lorcana is you do have some cards that you can resource and some cards that you can't resource. The cards that you can't resource are called like uninkable cards, and the ones you can are called inkable cards. Most of the time, these uninkable cards are the reason that they can't be resourced is because they are so powerful that if they were able to be resourced as well, the versatility of that would just be the cards would be so good. So in a game like Lorcana, it's like there's a lot of similarities that cross over, right? Because you have not only you can only ink a certain amount of cards in your hand, but yeah, it is so important to say, like I've sat there like, okay, like inking the right card or resourcing the correct card in altered sense is so critical and so important, because then you'll do it, and then as the turn plays out, sometimes you'll be like, oh, I messed up, and it's all about trying to predict what their move might be. And I think it's even trickier in altered, to be honest, because it's this kind of you do something, I do something stage, right? Like you're saying, Trickster, I feel like you can really get punished if they go down like kind of this 1, 2, 3 avenue instead of the 4, 5, 6, right? If they kind of go this direction, but you're prepared to possibly stop this direction, right? And it's definitely something that's I'm really excited to see how like competitive players and pro players are going to be able to handle this, because I think it probably does boil down to what you mentioned, Trickster, which is like you won't be able to play around everything, but you have to try and figure out, okay, what do I get punished by the least, and that's what you have to try and focus on to the best of your ability. And I'm also really interested to see, as these tournaments start to roll out. So as you mentioned, you've got the big one there on the 12th of October. There's a 1,000 player tournament happening in France next weekend that I may or may not be attending. Not confirmed yet, but I hope to be there, or at least cast it from home. That would be fun. And yeah, like I'm really interested to see, because like a game like Lorcana that I play now, like a meta's been established for so long that there's kind of like this rock paper scissors meta that's formed already, where I think typically you'll kind of have like hard control beats mid range / tempo, mid range / tempo beats aggro, and aggro beats control. It's kind of like this rock paper scissors meta, and I'm really interested to see what that's going to look like in Altered. You've got this kind of aggro could be maybe Sigismar or Bravos kind of going all in, and then you have this deck that can really answer the vast amount of power that these decks can output. And then you've got probably Izmir that's going to be like this, like you mentioned, Trickster, right? It's like as long as the early turns you can establish some presence, the later the game goes on, the more favored you're probably going to be, because you've got either these big bombs or these big removals that can come out. So I'm particularly interested to see how things are going to start forming there, and what rares are going to be kind of teched in and stuff like that for different matchups. And yeah, I mean, this is just the beginning. I do feel like, I don't want to overwhelm the viewers with all of this information, because like Alex mentioned, we're probably talking about stage 5 right now of this game, right? Like, getting into the competitive stuff, getting into the tournaments. But I think right now, if you guys are just brand new to Altered, like I mentioned, Board Game Arena is such an amazing tool for you guys to just experiment with. If you don't have that locals yet that you can go to and test with some people, just make some decks online and jam. I think as more kind of competitive events start to form, there's always what I like to call focus testing, where you'll play, like Trickster said, with your team of players, and you'll test certain matchups and stuff like that. But there's also I think if you just want to learn the ins and outs of a deck as a from a kind of outside perspective, and not honing in on the specifics, like, I have to do this on this turn, I have to do this on that turn. BGA is such a great tool. It's such a great tool to learn the sequencing of a deck. I mean, I've done it with Waru. The few games I've played already, I've learned so much. And but again, there's always more I can learn as I play more matchup, as maybe I do like more focus testing. So yeah, I'm just excited to see where things are going to go, and particularly excited to see, once a meta is established. I always love when people bring like these rogue spicy decks of like, oh, this faction isn't really considered meta, or it's not really playable, and you've got, bam, someone comes in with the absolute meta breaker that no one was expecting. So I can't wait for those moments to happen in Altered for sure.
Yeah, well, absolutely. You actually just won a Lorcana tournament. The deck you brought, I mean, you were kind of working on that in Toronto. It was not a meta deck, right? Like, you kind of brought some spicy brews, and I think that was something that definitely kind of benefited you. And I have to say as well, Kawa, I really appreciate kind of your insight on this stuff, because it really showcases like the 9 games you play at a very high competitive level. You bring a very balanced perspective to the conversation, and I just say, like, it's to the benefit of not only us but the listeners as well. So, and that experience is awesome. Actually, Trickster, you did mention the tournament in Arizona. Is this something that people can actually participate in still? Are they able to sign up?
Yeah, absolutely. I just made a post on my YouTube about this recently. I think that you still got plenty of time. There's about 2 weeks to get ready for the tournament, and at this point, there's still a lot of open seats available. I think a lot of people maybe are waiting to register until last minute, or just like haven't quite decided yet if they're going to be going. But I definitely encourage anyone who's interested or listening to, yeah, go sign up now, like, show your support, and definitely consider going even last minute. I was able to book my accommodations like a day or two ago, and it was still like very affordable, the prices and things. And there's hotels in 8-minute walking distance from the venue that are like at affordable prices and things. And so I definitely think that this is like a pretty accessible event, especially if you're in driving distance. If you're flying, you'd have to consider that. But there's a lot to look forward to here. There's $6,000 of prize support on the line, plus additional like unrevealed pricing that they've said like Equinox is bringing and things. So who knows what that'll be? Maybe some play mats. I have no idea. It could be promos. I have no idea, right? So we have a lot of prizes on the line. We also have some like content creators going, you might know, and some people from Equinox as well. Justin, the head of organized play for North America, will be there. Apparently, he's gonna be, I don't know if I'm supposed to reveal this, so oops if I wasn't, but he's gonna be doing some like opportunities to play against him, maybe with like a bounty kind of a situation. So that'll be exciting. Loki Knox, the community manager, I believe, is going to be there attending as well. So just a lot of fun people to meet. You might not get this opportunity again. A lot of great Altered to be played. 70% off physical cards too at the event, which I think is pretty dang good. I don't quote me on this because I think physical prices are half price already of digital. I think that basically means you'll be getting your rare cards for like 30 cents each or something like that at this point and stuff. And so I'd have to check those numbers, but I'm pretty sure it's that's the rate that it's going to be at and things. So there's a lot to look forward to for this event. Yeah, definitely look into it and like see if it's something that could work for your schedule or if you have the means to go. It could be a lot of fun and yeah, I'll be there. Hope that some of you listening, this inspires you to go as well.
It's pretty interesting, Trickster, that you bring up the idea of like acquiring the rares, right? Because I think that's kind of like one of the challenging things right now. And anybody that's played Magic knows it's like, oh, my whole deck basically has to be these rare cards, right? And like with Altered, naturally you have restrictions on how many rares you can have, and so those restrictions make those rares and the decision to add those rares into the decks extremely impactful. But without the active marketplace yet, as of recording, the opportunity to acquire these rares is very limited. And like even me, I open quite a bit of product, but I can't just put 3 ofs of whatever I want in my decks, right? So I have to, it's funny because like I'll design something with my 3 ofs. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And then I go to build my deck. I'm like, wait, I only have 2 of this? Damn it.
Yeah.
My whole idea is ruined, right? And so you have to kind of roll with the punches. But also, in my experience of like playing people on BGA and stuff, they also don't have their ideal decks either, right? Because they are clearly short a couple things. They're playing some filler substitutes here and there. So hearing an opportunity to pick up the physical cards is interesting. Now, my question to you would be, is there an intention to make those physical cards scannable for the digital collection, or is it only for the physical collection and not to be added to the digital side?
So you would be able to buy the digital as well, but it's separately. The main sale is on the physical cards, and I think that a lot of that is because most of the sales for Gamers Guild to this point have been digital because everyone's just buying them to play online, and there's not really a reason to spend the money on the physical yet. And so I think a lot of people are going to be going into this tournament with a digital collection, but they actually need the cards now for the first time ever, and that's why they're kind of doing this beneficial like sale for the physicals for all those people. Like for example, for myself, I have some friends who open maybe like 50 displays. That's a lot. They have everything they need. So I've had them send me like the digital copy so I can use it on Board Game Arena. But yeah, I would still need to pick up that physical. It will theoretically already have been scanned. Maybe you'll get lucky and they missed it or something. But yeah, you would just have to buy both of them at that point if you do want both or don't have the digital already.
How many boxes did you guys open? Trickster, how about you?
So I got the initial pledge I got was 4 displays. And then I believe I opened 3 more locally or from Gamers Guild. So let's see, that puts me up to 7. And then these ones are not necessarily mine, but in my circle, my brother opened 1 and my brother-in-law opened 1. So I guess I've had access to around about 9 displays at this point. Didn't quite complete my rare playsets though, like you were mentioning, even with those 9. And also, sadly, in my 7 displays, no golden boosters. Tears.
Me
Little
neither.
smallest violin right there. But some great. I pretty much got an alternate foil in almost every single one, which is only about 50-50 normally. So maybe it makes up a little bit for the no golden boosters.
Nice. Kawa, how about you, buddy?
Yeah, my pledge was the same as Trickster. It was 4 boxes. So open them up. It's exact same thing that you guys are talking about, right? Like there's some decks I'm trying to build. I'm like, nope, I got 1 of those rares. Nope, got 2 of those rares. But I was really happy with a lot of the stuff I opened. I think I got a lot of uniques for specific factions that I wanted to test a lot with. But also no golden booster for me either, unfortunately. But it was just fun to crack packs. I couldn't believe. I remember when I got my box at first. Like I knew, as the Kickstarter started to do better and better, and they added stretch goals and stuff. I remember I got my box, and I've opened a lot of product for Lorcana and for Star Wars at this stage. I'm sitting here with this box. I'm like, I see the 37 on it. I'm like, okay. I start opening. I feel like it's the next day by the time I'm done the box. I'm like, this is. It's a good thing, but I'm like, this is exhausting. This is so many cards, and it was just like it was crazy. And then I was like, obviously scanning them. I think they've done a terrific job with the mass scan feature though. Like I kind of just had this system where I kind of like hold my phone up and like flick them, and it would like scan them. So the fact I have this kind of bulk mass scan thing was like super useful when I did get all of my cards. But yeah, I'm the same right now. I'm missing a few cards. But the cool thing about this game is because it has this digital aspect. I'm sure like so Alex, I played against Raven there last week, and he has no cards. Like he just has a BGA account. So I asked, because I know they're planning to implement like a lend a deck system in the future. So you basically just formulate a deck and just say, right, all of these cards can just be temporarily traded, maybe for a 24 to 48 hour period. But the most you can do at the moment, which I'm very glad you can still do this, is if you have a friend and they literally have no cards, you can go card by card. It is a little bit tedious, but it's better than nothing at the moment. You can go card by card and just basically send it to them. And if they're trustworthy, that they're going to send them back, or if you guys want to say, listen, I really want these 3 rares for my Ordis deck. If you've got one spare, can you send it my way? It's so cool, right? Because it's like the digital aspect of trading cards, which is like, I don't know, I personally love that, because I've played so many digital card games before, but they've all been CCGs, so it's collectible card games, right? So I mean, Alex, right, it's like we played so much Marvel Snap. I played Hearthstone in the past, and yes, these games have like crafting systems, so you can disenchant previous cards that maybe you haven't really been using, or they're from prior expansions, and then you can make up these new cards. But there's no trading system in there. It's not like, oh, I have a friend and he has this perfect legendary card or rare card that I need, and we can just trade. No, it's like that's the difference between a collectible card game and a trading card game, right? So yeah, the system is really fun, and I'm glad they even have that feature that I mentioned where you can kind of go card by card and trade, because I basically made a deck for Raven, sent them all the cards, and we were jamming on Board Game Arena, and it was so much fun. You know what I mean? It's like another way to just get people into the game that maybe they don't have access to product at the moment, or they didn't get to back the Kickstarter, but they still want to play and stuff like that. So I just think in terms of accessibility, it's terrific. For every card game I play, I love to see a game be as accessible as possible, because I think it really sucks sometimes. Like for me, right? If BGA wasn't around, I don't know how much Altered I'd be playing at the moment, because I think there's one store in Ireland that started stocking it, and it's like the other side of the country, which it's no America or Canada. I don't have to drive 20 hours to get to the other side of the country or whatever. But it's still a pretty long distance for me just to go and play like a locals, right? If it's a bigger event, I'll probably make the journey for sure. But without BGA, yeah, honestly, I don't think I'd be playing this game as much as I am right now. So huge shout out to the team for working so hard on it. I think everything they've done so far, they've patched a lot of bugs on it. I think like on release there was a lot of kind of connection issues and stuff like that. I've already seen a vast improvement in that. So yeah, that's where I'm playing the majority of my games right now, because it is so accessible. And I can't wait to start jamming games with you guys more, maybe in preparation for tournament or for some particular additional content we may be doing for the channel. So yeah, I'm just excited.
I can't wait for all the people in the comment section down below to say in before, dude, commenting, hey Kawa, just got scammed sending all my buddy my cards. Thanks for the advice.
Yeah.
But you are
right.
right.
He took all my unique cards. Yeah.
All the unique cards, just unique cards, right? That's all you said. But I do think that like Board Game Arena does do a lot to help people be able to actually play the game. Like for me, where I am in Canada right now, there is not a single LGS that's carrying it. I can't even drive across the country, which would take a couple days, by the way, Kawa. I couldn't even find a place. So without BGA, I would be just up the creek, man, up the creek. So I do really appreciate this digital element to it, and a lot of people ask questions about that digital side to it. And obviously all of us that are in Altered realize that like you're scanning each individual card into your digital collection, whereas something like Pokemon, you're not getting a pack for pack. Like you're basically getting an additional digital pack. However, the contents are not going to be the same, right? So if you pull a super rare card in your physical pack, your digital pack might just have all garbage. Whereas with Altered, it's 1-to-1, which I think is really interesting. It marries the two collections together. And for me, it makes this marketplace really interesting, because with this marketplace, you're going to be able to, I don't want to say monetize your collection, because I don't think that should be the goal of any TCG. I don't think you should be going into a TCG with the idea of, oh, I'm cracking packs, and then I'm going to sell the cards for more than I paid for the box. That's not why we do this. But I do think that that digital side, and be able to like sell your extra copies or a particular unique in a faction that you know you don't like to play or whatever, I do think is valuable. And I think that's going to take us to our next topic of conversation, which is going to be, to be honest with you, on our second podcast, why we chose Altered in the first place. What drew us in? Because, listen, there is lots of competition out there. I mean, Kawa, you play every game on the planet, but somehow, Altered pulled you in. Trickster, Altered convinced you to start a brand new YouTube channel all about the game. And so we're going to take a second here to talk about what brought us into the game and, why we find it so enjoyable. And Trickster, we'll start with you. What brought you into Altered?
Yeah, I wish I remembered the very early days better than I do, but it's kind of that thing where you maybe like don't know something special's happening until later on, and so you weren't really paying as much attention. I'm pretty sure, I don't know where it was. It was maybe on YouTube or Instagram or something. Honestly, I get a lot of Kickstarter ads on Instagram, so maybe it was on there. I just saw an ad and for some reason thought it was interesting enough to read it, which only happens like about a third of the time or less. And yeah, I don't know. It was, I think that the timing was just right. One of the games that I've been playing, Shadowverse, it's kind of like on pause right now because they're coming out with a new version, but that's been delayed and then the previous version's not being updated. So there's kind of like a lull there. And then all of a sudden this new trading card game comes out. It's interesting. There's there was like fan made ways to play it. So even though it wasn't out yet, I could jump right into it. One of the most common ones that you can look up is Exalted. I definitely encourage that. I think Board Game Arena is my favorite way to play. I've been very impressed with it recently. I love that I can play my own uniques and that my opponents can too. But if you don't have the cards yet and you want to like try a deck that you don't own the cards for, you can go on Exalted and play a version of it with no uniques. And so it's kind of like half the game, but maybe that's better than what you have if you don't have any of the cards. And so you can definitely try that out. But yeah, I think I've decided, especially playing Altered, that I love the early stages of a game. I feel like when you get expansions and expansions down the road, sometimes things get a little crazy and the barrier to entry is higher for new players. And depending on how the balancing is done, it can have like some games get into issues and things. But when you're at like the very like base of a game, it's a lot more just about understanding the mechanics than it is about like having cards with crazy effects, because like all of the cards still are like relatively basic. I loved playing back when I was like running random cards like Inari in my Tasia deck, and I'm like, wow, I've got this 3/1/3, which is actually pretty bad, but if I play it at the right moment, it can be just as good as like a 3/3/3 or something. And I really enjoyed trying to figure out like the reserve system and how I could order my cards so that I'm never discarding from the reserve to have the most resources. And I loved figuring out which side do I play to and how do I like lead my opponent on and like kind of convince them to play first. And so a lot of these things that were new to new to me for this TCG that it was doing differently just made it so much fun to play early on. And I just really and I still enjoy figuring out some of like these differences and these nuances that come with the features like the reserve and the back and forth turns and things that Altered only brings. And I also have really enjoyed the deck building for Altered. I'm personally someone who pretty much always builds their own decks. I've definitely like been influenced by lists online and things at times, but I really like to try things myself and kind of reach my own conclusions and maybe be that person that someone that decks eventually, but like be the one to figure it out myself. And so in Altered with the unique system, it seems really exciting to me to kind of essentially like really make a place for deck builders to be successful. It's essentially impossible to net deck someone in Altered because unless you're not playing uniques, you'll never be able to play the exact same deck as them, which means that people who do like deck building and like reading cards and figuring out new combos and things kind of can have like a heyday there. And so yeah, I definitely think that is something that appeals to me, and I'm glad that the game brings. When you change just 3 cards in a deck with the uniques, suddenly that might mean you have to change your commons and rares too. And so I feel like, yeah, just like based off of I've seen this often. Like I got an Athena. This is gonna be an example, and I'll don't send me your PMs. You can't get this card. Oh, but this I got an Athena recently that is a 4 cost from hand and reserve, and it boosts your whole board when you play it. It's for Ordis, so it's like a charge. It's a 3/2/3, but basically it's a 4/3/4 that boosts all your other characters. And then when you play it from the reserve, if you control just one permanent, it loses fleeting, so you can have it forever. Crazy card.
Just one
But
permanent. What?
yeah, just one. So I mean, I will say it's maybe not even the most busted unique I've seen. There are some other crazy ones because the 4 cost is pretty high. But with that card, I'm like, well, maybe now I want to throw some carriers into my deck or something. And a lot of people play Sigismar with no permanents. There's multiple ways. I think one of the biggest changes you can make in Sigismar right now is your permanent suite. But a lot of people are playing no permanents. But like now that I have that unique, maybe it's time to cook and throw in some monolith again, or not monolith, carrier, because it's like now I have this card that is slightly better because of the uniques that I have. So maybe that's the difference to make it worth it in my deck. And so yeah, I think that the way that uniques change deck building and like make you have to think about what you throw in your deck too, along with just like the fresh like gameplay to explore, all of that coming together just really gets me excited about the game and makes it a lot of fun for me. And I mean, just throwing out a couple other things, the art's amazing, the digital collection's amazing, being able to print on demand. There's so many other things too that you just like sprinkle in that like didn't get me into the game, but like they're just nice to have as well. Yeah, it's just like a wonderful package, and I'm just so excited to keep exploring it. And yeah, I was hooked. I think about a week after I backed the Kickstarter, I probably made my channel. So there you go. That's some of the history.
That's awesome. And Kawa, what got you started with Altered TCG?
Yeah, I think for me, how I found out about the game was a close friend of mine, Raven, who, again, myself and Alex know from Marvel Snap and other card games. He made a video talking about Altered. I think he just reacted to the trailer and was like, okay, there's this new card game. It's like a mix of a physical and digital. Let's explore it. And he was watching the trailer and was kind of like asking all of the general questions that your first impressions would be like, okay, how is this going to work? You've got QR codes, you're trying to scan it. And then I think shortly after he kind of reacted to the trailer, he said to me, he's like, oh yeah, like we can go into Board Game Arena and just play the starter decks. Do you want to try? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So from the get-go, Board Game Arena is how I started to play Altered. The starter decks were there, and I played a couple of games. It was super, super fun, and I went back and forth about like I mean, as you said, Alex, right? I play so many card games, and I'm looking at my bank account, and I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at my bank account. I'm like, I think it might be worth it. And like, yeah, myself and my fiance, we decided to go in on the 4 boxes because I think by the time we backed it towards the end when there was at least a couple of days left, I think. But we're like, we'll back this. It doesn't come out for another couple of months. We'll really enjoy it when we do get the cards. And between that time, then I went to the UK Games Expo, and that's when I actually got to meet some of the Equinox team, got to play the game in person. I think actually even before the UK Games Expo, myself and my fiance, we printed off some of they have like print and play decks. So we literally went to our printer, started cutting out the cards. We used like not even proxies, but we literally just had, because it was like paper, we used like all of our bulk from Lorcana to just like actually solidify them in sleeves so they'd actually hold like shape. And yeah, we played with a bunch of that, and it was. It's just like so unique and so much fun, and every time I kind of return to it, for me, I will say it was kind of like this refreshing thing that anytime I play Altered, it's just like never like any other card game. And I always enjoyed that when I've been playing Lorcana for week to week, weekend to weekend, and I come to Altered, and I'm like, there's just so much space to explore. And now with this BGA stuff, like I could just keep building and building and building, and there's so much more potential with it. And of course, like Trickster said, the art is amazing. Mechanics incredibly unique. I haven't seen any other card game that has, so many stats on a card, but also it's so simple to understand, right? There's a hand cost, there's a reserve cost, and there's 3 stats on the card, and there's an effect on a card, and there could be a reserve effect on a card, but they've still managed to, make them relatively easy to follow and step by step and stuff like that. And I think I have to give a shout out to the game design team. I think we actually had a comment last week from one of the designers who has really worked on the uniques, and he really appreciated us doing the podcast and stuff like that. And that makes me feel great, to know that some of the Equinox team are already watching the stuff we're making. And I think if I've worked so hard on creating this card game over the past couple of years, it must feel rewarding to see the community really start to jump into the game and explore and expand and stuff like that. So yeah, shout out to all of the Equinox team. The guys have absolutely crushed it on this game, and yeah, I just want more. I think they're doing a terrific job, and I really have a lot of faith in them that they're really going to focus on trying to build the community and expand the community as much as possible, because I do think the digital side will take care of a lot of it, but it's also important to really look after the retailer side and look after these kind of LGS weekly play events, because that's going to be like the adventure pass, and that's going to be where your probably most committed players are going to be, because there'll always be people like myself who will play primarily on BGA, but you want to really look after the players that are going to go to a store week to week to play the game. And I have a lot of faith in the team, honestly. So yeah. What about you, Alex? What got you into the game?
Yeah, so it's so funny because, like, for me, the biggest limitation for me with all gaming is time, right? Like, I'm just so stretched for time all the time. Well, I said time like 7 times in that sentence. But at the end of the day, it's like, all right, I was at PAX East, right? I'm a huge PAX fan. I even have a book right there. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble pointing. I'm like mirrored across different screens here. But I have a book about PAX. I love PAX. I've been going to PAX for basically a decade or 2 decades, basically. And I love it. And when I was at PAX East, I'm like, oh, Altered. This looks cool. A new TCG. And like, obviously the very nice coloring, the art kind of drew me in. All the things that superficially would kind of start to draw you in, it actually worked on me. And I sat down, and what was interesting is that Justin happened to be there at the time, and Justin has worked in the past with some of the development team of Second Dinner, and so we kind of hit it off right off the top. And my first play experience was with Justin. He played Ysmir, and he absolutely destroyed me. He was merciless, and it was so funny because he was like, "No, you know how to play card games, right?" So we played. He's like, "I'm not taking it easy on you." So we did a couple rounds, and I ended up beating him once. I think it wasn't fair though. I did go the Ortis starter deck versus the Ysmir starter deck, which I think is a bit of a mismatch to some degree. So, easy dub, I guess. But, and I honestly, the gameplay was fantastic. And I loved the idea that Altered was this non-combative game. The idea that like you're going on these expeditions, you're exploring with your cards quite literally to win the game. I thought it was so innovative. And then not only that, I thought that the faction system was really interesting in the sense that like you had these multiple heroes to provide the factions with these multiple flavors, right? Because Bravos, for instance, it can be aggro, it can be ramp, it can be all these different things. And you don't see that very often in some other games. And then you have like the out of faction rares, which I thought was really cool because you can have these opportunities. And yeah, we have games that have printed like double colored cards and stuff like that, from Magic and everything. But I think this was a very interesting approach to making these rares, obviously kind of played out of faction to create this additional spice. And then I liked the deck building rules, the idea of having a limited number of rares. And when you're deck building, determining which rares go into your deck can have a massive impact on the quality of that deck and, of course, your specific flavor of it. And then I loved the actual, the actual, like the Gamegenic stuff, the card sleeves, all the accessories. I don't know what it was. I'm a sucker for that stuff. I will buy all the accessories in a game. And I was like, these card backs are so nice, right? I was like looking at them. So the whole package, it felt like, okay, Equinox, like this is generally a much smaller team making a very ambitious product, right? But they nailed it. Like, I couldn't even imagine starting a process like this. You know what I mean? And then so what happened was, like, I went home, I kept an eye on that Kickstarter. I'm like, I got to kickstart this game. In my head, I'm like, Alex, you don't have time. Don't play another card game, right? Your wife and your kids, they need you, Alex. You can't play another one. Your bank account's crying. You just can't do it. And I was like, oh, damn it. No, the last day of the Kickstarter. Okay. I'm staring at it. I'm like, I have to. I'm like, I love the game. I played the game. And you know what? I need to do it. So I bought in. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do an initial pledge. And then what I'll do is in the pledge manager, I'll buy more stuff. Oh, the humanity. There was no pledge manager. And so like I was distraught because I was going to order like all this stuff. And then like I was like, no, I couldn't get all the stuff I wanted. I was in shambles. And it was my fault. I went back and they had posted like 9 times that there was no pledge manager. They had tweeted it like 45 times. It was all over the place. There was no pledge manager. But your boy Alex doesn't read emails properly. And so there you go. So anyways, that's what got me into Altered. My experience actually playing it with Justin, shout out to Justin, who was our guest last week. And it was just such a remarkable game. And getting to play it like the starter deck stuff at PAX West now, where I got to meet Trickster. I couldn't even believe it. How do we just gloss over that? I go to PAX West and I see Trickster. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I know who you are. And it was just such a funny introduction to the two of us there. And we played a lot of Altered. And Trickster, you could speak to this too. When you were teaching people how to play Altered, were they not completely blown away each and every time?
There were so many things that you would just mention, and then like their eyes would just like light up, or like the light bulb would go on. You'd like mention the unique cards, and like they wouldn't get it at first. Like you say it, you explain it perfectly, but they just can't even believe it's true. And then like all of a sudden they're literally one of the one, and they're like, whoa. Or like they're playing the game and Sakurabu comes down and it moves the expedition backwards, and they're like, you can do that? And things like that. Just so many times people really just, like I feel like as soon as you get them to play the game, they're hooked. Like they're toast. They mention their family, their bank account, but once you start playing the game and once you start like dipping your toes in the water, it has been very well received. I feel like, I don't know if no one's ever been like, wow, this was a bad experience. This is worse than other card games. Like people don't say that to me when they try this game. They like, it is a well received game, and I think that PAX was definitely a testament to that for me. 4 days of like teaching people to play, and then like even starting day 2, you just see the same people wanting to come back again. It was very well received.
And that's going to take us to our mailbag segment, where you can leave a comment down below on YouTube, and we'll pick up a couple of them and we'll talk about them each week. Now, the first one comes from Bill Daisley, and it reads, "The game is so great and we're seeing the community grow. Mailbag question or concern. It sounds like we might be waiting more than usual 3 months for the next set. Can we get a better date when we will start to see the next set to keep the cards fresh?" Now, thankfully, we didn't have to guess too much here, because Justin Parnell did respond and said the set cadence is currently set for September, January, and May. So it looks like they're currently planning 3 additional sets each year. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting because, like I said, as someone that's playing multiple card games right now, companies do it in different ways a lot of the time. And this has been a thing I'll briefly touch on again. I haven't really played much Magic the Gathering, but a big thing I hear from a lot of Magic the Gathering players, even yourself, Alex, I know you've played a lot of the game in the past, right? It's like the amount of product they throw out at players. And obviously this is a very well-established company, over 20 years of experience, and, they're working with, this IP and that IP, and they're throwing all of this product at you. And sometimes it can be hard to, keep up with all of this stuff. And I think if you're throwing so much at a consumer, sometimes they're like, I simply don't have the money to keep up with this, the time to keep up with this. So I always find it interesting to see what the time period between sets is for a TCG company, not only for not only to keep the game fresh every few months, but then also like how much they actually throwing at the consumer. Can they keep up with it? So yeah, from the reply we see that Justin said the set cadence is going to be September, January, and then May. So correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like this is like 4 months between sets. Lorcana's 3 months between sets. And while I love the game, I think sometimes you can feel, wow, like I feel like we just got this set and the next set's already been announced. We're already doing card reveals. And I think maybe it works well in certain games rather than others. I think I do like the 4 months personally for Altered, because I feel like there's a lot of experimentation you can do. A meta, it doesn't get solved that quickly. You'll have the kind of the BGA testing, which is going to help. You'll be able to play so many games and stuff like that. So like that's going to be super super exciting. But yeah, I kind of reckon every 3 months for a card game is like okay, like that's fine, but there is going to be a lot of stuff coming out. 4 months is I like 4 months personally between sets because it shows that they're going to take time to really let the sets grow, people to try and experiment with as many heroes and decks as possible, all the cards. So yeah, I mean for me that seems like it's a good sign, and it's not too long either. I think if it was like over 4 months, like I do think towards the the last month, people could feel right, okay, maybe the meta has been solved. Maybe, we want something to kind of shake things up because that did definitely happen in Hearthstone to me a few times where I'm like, right, I am really ready for the next set. And there were times even where sometimes I'd take the last month off playing or play a lot less than I did, around the set release. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are for, every 4 months.
Yeah, I think that I am happy it's not like 2 a year. I think that 3 is definitely just gonna like keep things a little fresher. Also, there's kind of like and some additional layers here. They're gonna have the September set be like a larger set, and then the other 2 sets be smaller sets. And I think that that is something that I appreciate because there are 18 heroes in this first set, and that's a lot to explore. And I feel like having the smaller sets can just kind of be a way to shake up the meta and let some of the underrepresented heroes shine without just bringing in so much new stuff that some stuff like never gets a chance because there's already new stuff replacing it and it just gets like pushed away. So I do like these larger sets where it can give you like a year's worth of stuff to explore with small adjustments throughout the year to kind of like shake up the meta and keep things fresh. So I think that is a pretty good balance. I was really like worried at first, and I've kind of been told some that like we're not going to be overwhelmed with heroes, but I was just worried that we'd get so many heroes that you would never really get a chance for the ones who are underperforming to shine because you just get a new one instead to use. And so I do like that it sounds like there will be these bigger expansions and these smaller expansions. And so yeah, that's something I'm excited about. I also think that the 4 months, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see because for a physical card game, I feel like you need more time to play it. Now that this is both digital and physical, maybe things might get a little stale if you can play online a ton, at which point maybe there could just be a little bit of like online balance changes or something to keep things fresh. I don't think that's in the plans, but I'm like, there's still room for that. But one thing that I feel like does encourage the extended time period is the unique hunt, because unlike some other trading card games where you can play your best version of your deck the first day of the expansion, it might take you a month just to even find the cards that you need to build your deck. And so if you're trying to like find and collect uniques and figure out what's available and trade with your friends, it's going to be a slower process to solve a meta and to like go through the process with Altered than it will be for another game. And so I think that, yeah, being able to get new unique cards throughout the 4 months to shake up your deck and things kind of can keep it feeling fresh and keep your decks feeling new, even though you maybe don't have like a full new set coming out.
And yeah, for me, I just want to reiterate that I do think that the 3 month cadence is probably too fast. And like I play Lorcana very casually, Kawa, you know this, and I feel like I'm not like I felt like I couldn't keep up in a way that like I just fell off. And then you fall far enough behind that it's not until like a DLC Toronto or something like that that I try to catch up. And I think that's not the greatest approach. It keeps things fresh, but it also doesn't provide things the opportunity to breathe. And exactly what Trickster said, we have so many heroes, so many archetypes still undiscovered and unfigured out. It'd be a damn travesty to move on from this feeling so fast, right? And so it's also worth knowing that Equinox and I'm sure they're going to be taking some like an analytical approach to this here, and I'm sure they're going to be kind of getting some data, taking some feedback. And they're going to be moving those dates around depending on, first of all, what their production schedules are like, but also on the feedback of what the people are saying. If people are like clamoring for earlier set releases, then maybe they move towards that 3 months, right? If people really like the meta the way it's evolving, then maybe they delay it slightly. I do think that a smaller company like this is likely to be a little bit more responsive to what the players are actually looking to do, especially the early adopters, as opposed to some of the other brands, like you mentioned Magic. And I feel like Magic they're milling sets so fast that it doesn't feel like that they're their intent. I don't want to sound mean, but like haven't been buying those sets either, because it feels like much more of like a, hey, if we release lots of sets, that's a business move, baby. It's not about the game, it's about the business. And that's what it kind of feels like, right? And don't get me wrong, I look at, a Dog Meat Commander deck and I'm like, hell yeah, I'd like to get that Fallout, Dog Meat Commander deck. But like, what are we doing? What are we doing? There's too much coming out at once. And so I do think that there is some validation at giving things a chance to just simply breathe. Right? And on that note, we should be talking about the next question, which comes from T Green. Is there a plan to release this on Apple Podcast or Spotify? Would love to listen to the podcast while driving. Well, I've got great news, friends. Kind of. There's good news and bad news. I know that a lot of people have been clamoring for this on their audio podcast platforms of choice, and it's there on 99% of them. Apple Podcasts, for some reason, manually decides to review their podcasts, and they're the only ones who have not yet approved Altered Insights. And so you can find us on Spotify, you can find us on all the other ones, and hopefully by the time this goes up, and hopefully by the time the next one goes up too, Apple would have approved us. So guys, I'd like to thank you so much this week for joining us. It's been a ton of fun. Man, we talked for a while. We're already over an hour. Kawa, Trickster, want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for kind of sharing your knowledge with us and your insights on this podcast, which is ironically titled Altered Insights. We'll see you guys on that next one.